Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to look at making a 3D level from a 2D map. I'm inside of Unreal and I've created a blank level. I'm going to create some lights in here just to make it a little bit more friendly to navigate. I'm going to go up to Window, Environmental Light Mixer, and I'm just going to add all of the resources it has here by clicking those buttons. It's added them to the level, and now that looks a lot better. We want to be able to add our map onto a 2D surface, and the best thing for that is probably going to be a plane. So I'm going to go to my Creation panel, or Place Actors panel, whichever one you want to go to here. We go to Shapes and then Plane and put a plane in the world and just snap that to 0, 0, 0. We're going to benefit from our previous planning of being able to have the plane exist on a exactly 100 by 100 dimension. This gives us the ratio that we're going to need to be able to set the scale for the asset. I've already gone ahead and created the texture for the BSP by pulling it into the engine, and I've created a material from that. So I'm going to apply the material to this plane, and you can see the map is not as big as we'd want it to be. So to get this scaled up properly, we have to revisit Photoshop to understand how big it should be. Photoshop has this file at 2000 by 2000, and we placed our grid, which was a 100 grid, at a 25% representation, which means there's 4 times as much grid as there would otherwise be. So if I have a 2000 across grid, and it's broken up by hundreds for my grid, 100 by 100, that would be 20 across, but because I have a 25% representation, it's 4 times that. So I need 80 times the size of the map at a 100 scale to be able to represent the actual size of the world. So as I come back into Unreal here, if I come down to the scale reference for this, I can change the X and the Y to 80 and change my grid from 50 to 100, and you'll notice that the grid in Unreal here is perfectly aligned to my grid in game. And so I have a one-to-one relationship between what I drew and what I can build, and I don't need to make any guesstimations or do mental math or anything like that. I'm going to start by blocking this out with BSP. Some people prefer to use the modeling tools or play static mesh templates, and that's fine. But my method I'm going to show you here today should give you a pretty good idea of why BSP is still a very valid development tool in 2026. I'm going to start by building out the floors for some of these areas, and then I'm going to build out the walls a little bit and then show you a more completed block out that would demonstrate the same processes. So I'm going to go to the geometry tool, and I'm going to choose box. By default, my box has selected the material that I already had selected. So if I deselect that and then we delete this box, we pull it out, now we have a clean box to work with. All right, our floors don't need to be too big, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this down. I'm going to switch to my my brush editing tool to adjust the sizes of these objects. So I'm going to come over here, squish it down to 100, and then bring it all the way over. And now I have my floor. Now I happen to know that this is going to reflect a very similar dimension to one of my other areas, so I'm just going to rotate and position that into place. And boom, we have a floor for the second area done, and I'm holding down Alt and using the translate tool to put the third floor in place. I'm going to clone that over here, and I'm going to go back to my brush editing tool, and I'm going to make the central floor based off of this floor, because we don't need to re-snap something to the grid. We can just keep on using the same objects. And then I'm going to need to fill in my stairs here as well. So I'm just going to bring this asset over here. And we could have had a small template to draw from as well, just to copy smaller sizes as needed. And I think this is only supposed to be 4 wide. Oh, you can see the map right there. Thank goodness it's underneath. We can get a clear reference. Select this edge, and then bring it right up flush to the edge of this level, or this room. And this should be similar to what I have over here. So you can start to see where this is all going. I'm going to, at this point, start to put in some walls, and I want to make sure that my walls are going to be representative of the space that the player will experience. So I want to make sure I get those to the right height. Right now, I don't have on my map the right height, so I'm going to want to be able to place my player inside of the space to help establish the scale. So when I put the player in here, each one of these squares is about 100. So I'm thinking that the player is going to sit just under 200, and we want tall ceilings in these alleyways. So we're going to go ahead and make the ceilings, or the walls, 500 units so that the ceilings can sit on top of those. So if I want to build the walls here, what I'm going to do is add another box into the environment, and I'm going to shrink it down a little bit so that it fits exactly into the width of the size that I wanted to have for my walls. You can see that here. So I use H to hide an object and Shift H to bring them back. So if I want the walls to go all the way around and then to meet up with these surfaces, then what I'm probably going to want to do is use the extrude tool on this one object to get the walls where I need them to be. Now I'm going to duplicate this object across each room because I'm going to have this 100 by 100 block that's going to be useful for each one of them. If I build the walls for one, I should be able to replicate it for the others. So let's save ourselves some trouble by not creating a new set of geometry for each room. All right, so I'm going to do this first room here, and I'm going to use my extrude tool by going Shift 7, selecting a surface, and then clicking extrude. Now that I have that, it'll create new geometry for the BSP, and I'm going to stop just shy of the corner to give myself a new corner. Now I can select both of these surfaces, if my mouse will let me do that. All right, both surfaces. I can bring those over here. I need to select the extrude tool because I deselected a surface. And then I can take them out one more. And then I can select both of these surfaces here and here, if it'll let me. And use the extrude tool, and I can see I need to go 1, 2, 3, and then an additional 1. So I'll say 300, apply, and then 100, and apply. And now I've matched that up to where I need to be for my my ramps, what are going to be my stair ramps. All right, so with this wall in place, I should be able to copy it into position. If I go back to my selection mode, I'm going to rotate it this way and position it right there. And you always want to find ways to optimize and make more efficient your workflow. And if that requires designing things on the grid and then moving them off the grid later, for example, if I wanted this to be more of an elbow joint entry as opposed to straight off of this main hub, then I could still take that framework and then move it around and make adjustments after the fact. But the general setup needs to be should be roughly the same. I'm going to select each one of these surfaces, because as you remember, I said I wanted to have 500 high ceilings, but I didn't put my walls at 500 high. So all I need to do is come back. I have these assets selected, and in brush editing mode, click and drag over these vertices, 1, 2, 3, and then go back to perspective mode, and you'll see that my ceilings are now high as they need to be. I didn't grab this one. Let's go back inside of the brush editing kit, and we'll just grab these ones and bump these up as well. All right, things are starting to look pretty good. If I want to put a roof on these, I can just grab these floors, and we'll just hold Alt, click and drag, and now I have roofs to each of these spaces. It's starting to look a little bit more like a level. When I go play from here, this is about the size that I wanted, a larger, more street-centric architecture. This area in the center is going to be elevated and enclosed. So I'm going to do a wall for this. Let me do brush editing. And I want to bring it out to right here. Maybe a little bit further. Let me switch to our top view. Oh, I wasn't in extrude mode, so that's perfectly fine. We can Control Z that, switch back to extrude. Right there, over the edge. Right here, and over the edge. And once again, the height for this should be adjusted. So if I switch to the side view, 1, 2, 3, back to perspective, I can take this one into selection mode and then rotate it into place. And I can take both of these and rotate them into place. And then I can add my roof on top of this. All right, so with that all in place, I can start to build the elevation for my map. I know that based off of my layout here, I had the base areas, the base rooms, the satellites from the hub at 0, the central fountain at 200, this area at 400, and then this area over here at 600. So before I get into all those, I just want to show how the elevation would work inside of Unreal. It's a pretty easy, straightforward adjustment for working with BSP. I can take the walls, floors, and ceilings here, and we just want to move them up 200 units above where everything else was. And since I'm already on 100 snap, then that's a pretty easy adjustment. So anything that didn't come up can be moved after the fact without any headache. So I now have my walls, floors, and ceilings there. And in order to get my stairs to be proper ramps, I just come in here. I can select all these at the same time, go to my brush editing mode, select each of the surfaces that is facing the center, and raise them up 200. So now those are proper stairs. And then I can select this guy right here, and I'm going to move its outer face the correct distance and the correct height, and I don't need to worry about calculating angles. It's already in the right spot. I'm going to switch back to selection mode. I'm going to copy this guy over here, and now if I take these two, I should be able to copy them over to each side to fill in that space. And just using shift while I do the translate tool to move the camera along with me. And so now you can start to see these spaces are starting to frame up rather nicely. So I'm going to jump over to the other level where I have more things built out, but hopefully this gets you an idea of how you can start to block things out pretty quickly using BSP. In this other level, as I go to it here, you'll notice that I started to apply some concepts of lighting to figure out how I was going to block in the environment. From the level design document that we implied, there was going to be canopy overhead, so it wasn't going to be direct sunlight, but we're going to have something blocking it in. And I've started to use some loose coloring and static meshes to populate inside of the space. I use some of the BSP tricks that can be found in my channel under BSP geometry editing to just create a quick column that could be used to represent the interior of the space that we were trying to build. And I made a quick bucket. So the bucket's just a box that's been shaped and added. I changed the color by creating a brown material. So blue material, a brown material, and I've added some things here to make the game look a little bit like the game is going to be at the end. So the timeline for how I can grab a bucket, run through, place it on the ramp, go back, get the buckets, fill it up with water, come back, go back, get a bucket, fill it with water, and then leave, is now able to be play tested and walked through cleanly. So just through some simple BSP, a few static meshes, and some materials, I can play test and validate that what I think is going to happen in my level is actually feasible in the time that I think it is, and with the space being able to represent something that an artist can work with. Hopefully this has been helpful for you to figure out how to block out a map, and the process from going from 2D to 3D hasn't been too difficult. I hope this gives you an idea of where you can go, and I hope that you keep building.